There is further evidence that a growing number of renters are too scared to call their landlords when something's wrong, fearing they risk rent hikes or even eviction. It comes from a survey by tenant groups and the Australian Council of Social Services. To tell us more, we're joined from Sydney by Leo Patterson-Ross from the National Association of Renters Organisations. Leo, good morning and welcome to News Breakfast.
Good morning, James. Thanks so much.
Let's start with the obvious one. How many renters are worried about asking their landlord for repairs?
So, 70%, almost 70% of renters said they were worried about asking for repairs that needed to happen because of a range of reasons. Up to 70% because of the worry about rent increases, but more than half because of eviction or for being listed on some kind of database, some blacklist, or just getting a bad reference. So it's a really high number of people who don't feel able to ask for one of the most basic things under our tenancy agreements.
Now, when we talk about maintenance, I wonder if people watching this morning might think, oh, well, is that just a dripping tap? But it seems like this is more serious problems too, things like pest infestations or even mould or very urgent repairs.
Yeah, look, the question covers all sorts of maintenance and certainly for some people it might have been more minor, but it is large problems that can be causing significant damage to the building and making the repair much more expensive and costly even for the owner. So it's a problem that people aren't safe to report these issues for everybody involved.
Now, we just brought up some statistics from this report. One of them that jumped out at me is that rents have risen 47% in the past 5 years. I mean, we all know that they've gone up, but that's still a startling figure overall. Who is finding it hardest now to make ends meet?
So, in some ways, the people finding it toughest aren't surprising. The people with lower incomes, people living with Centrelink, but also minimum wage workers, but also people with disabilities, people who have different cultural backgrounds, and people who've been renting for a longer time reported a much higher rate of feeling worried, feeling unstable, feeling that risk of raising issues.
If rents increase again over the next year or so, even by, say, 3, 4, 5%, how much pressure will that put people under?
So people are already under a lot of pressure, and that 47% increase it has been causing significant difficulty for people. But when we asked them, about a third of people said they could not afford a 5% increase from now, and that was particularly the case for people who've moved more recently, maybe unsurprisingly, because they've just paid the highest, most recent rents. But it was still true for people who had been moving in the last 2, 3 or 4 years, because the rents now are still rising on the back of previous rapid rent increases.
Just before I let you go, Leo, obviously house prices are forecast to go up again. They're already extremely high for some people, totally unaffordable. Do renters' rights need to play a bigger part in our national conversation now, given that we might have not entire generations, but substantially more people in younger generations certainly renting for much, much longer periods of time?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we have about a third of the country renting their home, and that has increased. It's going to stay at least at that level for the foreseeable future. And we're talking about people who are now raising families while renting, growing old and retiring while renting, and we need to make sure that the renting system actually works for them as well. We can't rely on ownership, partly because it's so expensive, but the consequence of it being that expensive is that it puts pressure on people to save amounts and borrow amounts that they can't afford, and so there's this barrier for people getting into owner occupation that we won't see shifted anytime soon. Renting is a perfectly valid, perfectly able to live in rental system, but we haven't put in the effort to actually design it for people to live their lives in. And that's what's really missing, and that's the attention that we need to give now to the renting system.